Whoops, my camera died. Give me a second. I have a backup.
That's all the time we have, ladies and gentlemen. All right, Straza, today's a treat, buddy. We have arguably a legend in the trading world, Mr. Michael Martin. Michael, thanks for joining us, buddy.
Yeah. Hey, Gerard, go to cash. I just got a really good confidence. We got to be at a market top.
You're a legend in my world.
Sell everything. Go to cash. I want treasury bills. I want ultimate safety. Thank you, Sean. I mean,
Michael, I've known you for a little while. You and I have crossed paths over the years, but we got to hang out in person just recently in California. And Steve Straza met you for the very first time. So I know that Straza is really looking forward to this conversation because he's going to get to learn a lot about you. And I'm sure there's a lot that I don't know also. So we've been looking forward to this conversation. So thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. I had the best time. I was in so kind of need of a vacation, and just everyone that I met, from, the folks that I kind of knew by name or I knew via email through All-Star Charts. And then even some of the people there, like a couple of the folks, I don't know if we should mention their names, but I caught up with people that I actually knew from years ago. And then a few folks who were fans of the show too. So it was just a great, it's great to get JC in one place for 2 complete days because it's insanely difficult to do that. So thank you very much for having me.
Yeah.
It's a nice community. And how fun is it to, we hang out and have fun, but then we can also nerd out because we all want to talk markets at the same time. So.
And have a bocce ball tournament. I mean, come on. I know lots of groups, but no one can say they had a bocce tournament.
So we connected over dinner, and you were telling me stories, and I just really love talking to you because you were talking about growing up in New York, just a couple towns over from where I grew up.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to share your mob stories, but why don't you take us back to the beginning and tell us kind of how you got started before markets?
You can't just drop mob stories and then not discuss mob stories. So now we have to.
Oh.
Well, yeah. I mean, I grew up working class, and I wasn't afraid to work hard. My parents were both Depression era kids, so work ethic. My sister and I have phenomenal work ethic. But as growing up, most of those were day player, jobs where you work for a day, you get a decent wage. And that's good, right? It's practically in the Constitution of America, right? It's part of being American. When you do that enough, though, you kind of come to understand, that's as good as it's going to get. So I had to think IP, like intellectual property. What can I do to use my brain? Because all the jobs that I had growing up were I started a landscaping company, made a fortune, used that money to pay for 2 years of school. Tuition was $30K a year. And then, I caddied golf bags, met some great people, amazing people, waited tables. And I made, like I said, at the Mafia restaurant, but I knew that was as good as it was going to get. So I didn't want to get comfortable with that kind of money because it's there was huge opportunity cost. If I didn't go to work, I wasn't going to get paid. So I didn't know how to make that jump from blue collar to white collar. That was a really long transition for me. But a lot of things that I do, because I don't have any fear of losing, and I tend to be slightly impulsive. I'm going to start. And this is good for traders to hear too. Don't worry about the business plan. Take the first steps. You'll figure out step 2 once you're there. You know what I mean? Just go do it. Don't use paper. Don't paper trade. Use real money. Try a little bit, risk 10, 25 bucks. Your goal isn't to make money at the beginning. Your goal is to find a process with which you're compatible that you can repeat day after day. The profitability and the big money will come later. So leaving my hometown, moving to New York City, that was eye-opening on several levels because now I was with people who were really, really bright. I was a good student. They came from every different kind of religion and culture and country that you could imagine. And so the education was multifold. It was great.
So you're working these jobs, you're waiting tables, you're doing landscaping, you're carrying golf bags, and okay, I got to go to college. So were those jobs ultimately just a stepping stone so that you could go pay for college?
That's a great question. I didn't know it at the time. I just kind of did it because minimum wage was 250, like 250, maybe $3 at the time. And for the lifestyle choices and the things that I wanted to do, I played ice hockey since I'm basically 4 years old. Skates and then were $150, you'd go through sticks every 2 weeks, a stick would break, right? So
Ice
the gear
hockey
was,
is the most expensive sport for families to have their kids in by far.
and then there's exactly, and then there's the ice time. And so I started as a right winger, but then very quickly became center iceman. Why? Well, because we had ice in my hometown for 4, 5, 6 months the year, basically. And so I was a good skate. And so naturally I wanted to keep playing hockey, whereas, baseball wasn't so expensive. Football was all through the school.
Right.
And so most of it, Steve, was to kind of pay my bills because I didn't want to be a burden on my parents. And I also wanted to have money for doing the things that I wanted to do that I wouldn't be able to go to my parents for. Like, I didn't want them to underwrite like my life. There was, once I turned 14, I was driving a 1965 Army Jeep that you would see like at the beginning of MASH in just up and down the streets of my neighborhood. Now, this is very rural New York. Yes, I was doing it illegally. There's a strip of grass growing down the middle of the road, and I was just cutting lawns. I was using a push mower, and then when I was 16, I bought a big bobcat, a big 3-foot deck bobcat, and then I would cut an acre of property in about 20 minutes. And then everyone would see that. So the whole neighborhood basically became a client, and then it was word of mouth. And so it was doing, a lot of money, and a lot of it was cash. So, and then, I basically sold that. And that became, a significant amount of money. And I didn't want to borrow. I didn't want to be a debtor. I didn't really know what credit was at the time, but I didn't like owing people money at all. It was a vibe with me. I didn't like, which is funny now because I trade with margin and use enormous amounts of leverage, but I know where it is. I know how to mark everything to the market and kind of know where my risk is, but it was more just hustling. I just wanted to make money. I wasn't afraid to ask people for business and get the door slammed in my face. I'd regularly knock on people's doors at 8 o'clock in the morning after a big snowstorm and say, "Hey, do you need your driveway shoveled?" Because I didn't know any better. I knew I wanted the money. The feeling of wanting the money was greater than the fear or the whatever I would feel if I got rejected.
So,
Michael, you and I have similar stories in that regard. I could say that, I grew up in a home, and my parents were divorced when I was 7 years old, and my mother was struggling to, provide for 3 children. And I too had that same feeling that you had. And I didn't want to be a burden to my mother financially. I didn't want to be a burden anyway. I always went out of my way to not be a burden and be self-sufficient and self-reliable. And I don't remember when it was, but sometime around the age of 10 or 11 or 12, I definitely got the bug that, hey, if I want things, I have to earn the money to get it. And just like you, I mowed lawns, I shoveled driveways, I had a paper route, I did all those things. And I too wanted to play ice hockey, and I needed to have these jobs to pay for hockey because hockey is so, as you mentioned, it's so goddamn expensive.
Insanely expensive.
Yeah, it's by far more, like, my son plays all the sports, right? Except hockey, which is weird because he likes hockey, but he doesn't play it. And thankfully there's no place to play hockey where I live, which is a shame. But I'm kind of thankful because he plays basketball and that doesn't cost anything. He plays baseball, that's negligible. But if he was playing hockey, it'd be thousands of dollars every season. It's crazy.
Do you guys think that need for financial independence kind of turned you into young entrepreneurs and helped you learn about business at an unusually young age that helped you later? Or
I'll let you answer that, Michael.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd say yes, I was born with an entrepreneurial understanding of things and seeing opportunity. I was a natural born speculator, and by luck, I have the right temperament for being, what we slangly call speculators, in the markets. I don't freak out. I think if I didn't do what I do in the markets, I'd be a good, 911, what's your emergency? Or an emergency room surgeon. Like, I just don't freak out under pressure.
Yeah.
And I think that's a skill I can learn to enhance it. but I think like I was born with it. So to me, that's just dumbass luck, basically. But
Surrounded by it, like all your like cousins and uncles had their own like small businesses and stuff, so you kind of figured like this is the route to making money. Like what gave you the idea to start a landscaping company so young?
I didn't realize like it was even a company. I just saw that there were 8 people who would pay me every week to cut the grass. It didn't occur to me that that was a company. All I knew was that I could regularly go back there because they either didn't have kids, or in some cases the kids were just so damn lazy. They'd be inside the house maybe with their Ataris or whatever, or their pole position video game with those gigantic Ford gigantic D batteries. And I would be outside cutting the grass, and the kids would be inside eating bonbons or, you know, mud pies, scooter pies, the marshmallow scooter pies on the couch. And I'd get their parents to give me $10. And that wouldn't work in my house because my dad's size 10 shoe would be hitting me somewhere in my back pocket area. So we had to contribute around the house, but yeah.
So, all right. So you're entrepreneurial, whether by design or by necessity. That was a skill that you kind of acquired as an early teen that carried you into college. You said you were working all these different jobs to pay for college. And then at some point you get into trading. I mean, did trading to you feel like a job like these other jobs, or was this like a whole new thing? And it was like, oh my goodness, look at the money that can be made here. Look at the lifestyle that can be had here. Like, what is it that like was the light bulb for you? Like, oh, this is what I want to do.
So the landscaping pretty much ended when I was 18, and then I moved to Manhattan. And then, you know, because we live in a seasonal state, right? You a little bit know that more than me because you're way upstate where they need earth movers and bulldozers to move all the snow. Downstate by me, they could use regular snow plows.
Yeah.
You guys would get 10 feet of snow. We might get 3, 4, you know, but it was seasonal, right? So that's why I understood the commodity and the concept of crop year, because I grew up in it like you did. If you go 2 hours outside of Manhattan, most folks don't know this, but it's an agriculture and it's a dairy state.
Yeah.
Right. So when I went to New York, Manhattan, I needed work because I was focusing on school. So basically the work was seasonal. Outside, I'd be on the golf course. Once the golf course is closed, I'd go inside and I'd wait tables and I'd go back and forth. I also had a work study job at facilities management. And at facilities management, what I didn't know at the time, that was like $10 an hour just so I could have running money. I didn't know that my school was the third largest landlord, still might be, in Manhattan at the time after the Catholic Church in the city proper. So they were very sensitive to commodity prices as users of commodities. They were inherently short the physical, heat and oil, and natural gas.
You went to Columbia?
Yeah. And so they needed someone who could manipulate data in Lotus 123, which was the prevailing spreadsheet at the time, to see could we find seasonal tendencies. And of course, commodities are cyclical, so you could. And so that's when, I started. The story that I remembered thinking about at the time was the Sparts. When you think about the billions and billions of dollars that this put in people's pockets, it came down to one decision. And the one decision was when Bill Gates and his partners all had, basically MS-DOS, and they needed and IBM wanted to have an operating system. They didn't sell it to them; they leased it to them. And so then the rest is history. Microsoft kind of came about and became Windows and this and that. So all the work that I had done on those hedging models, the light bulb went off in my brain saying, if I can find seasonal tendencies in the commodities where prices generally ebb and flow over seasonality, whereas the school would be using it to hedge, I could take that trade as a spec trade. And so the light bulb went off. I didn't care about, Wall Street, the movie had already been out, but I never wanted to. I had dinner at Le Cirque. I had dinner, I had plenty of friends who had Ferraris. I didn't need any of that lifestyle stuff. So it wasn't that I wanted the liberty that the money gives you, right? The liberty that I could bring in capital and reinvest that money into other capital producing investments, right? That either spit off cash or could grow so I could sell it. And then I'd have, you think about if you make four or 5K a month, you could basically say, okay, well, if I had $1 million at 5%, there's your 50K, it's 4K a month passive income. That's kind of where my mind was working. It wasn't because I wanted to live. I did have a fantasy of wanting to live in the Dakota. That was because I was a big John Lennon fan. But other than that, I didn't really have, I don't want stuff. I don't collect stuff. My biggest expense is paint and oil sticks and canvases. I don't have, fancy stuff. I don't have a fancy car.
So when that clicked to you that you could trade seasonals, were
Yeah.
you able to start trading when you were in college? Like, did you have the money, or did you have to kind of wait? You knew it was something you wanted to get into, but you couldn't.
Yeah. So it was the gray period of Michael Martin because I had some money, but I didn't have money to lose. Right. So I was by definition trading with scared money. And, I had like 5, 6K. And so even a penny move in a sleepy little corn contract was really a 1% drawdown, right? So, that's the way I looked at it. Plus stocks traded in eighths. It was an eighth in, an eighth out, and the spreads were often at least an eighth, if not a quarter. So I was looking at 50 cents, as a break even in stocks. And in futures, I kind of avoided, as I got to Wall Street, I couldn't get a job as a trader, so I got a job at what was then called Smith Barney Harris Upham, and it was 2,800 guys, and you had to pass the Series 7 or you were fired. And then they kind of actually taught you how to make money. But anytime you work at a wirehouse, you have access to Wall Street, so you had your first online trading accounts, right? Because in those days there was no internet. People would get all their data from the C section of the Wall Street Journal, right? What is it, Finance and Money or something like that? And so that's good and bad. And I just basically said, okay, if I have to try to do this, I really have to study the data. So then again, I got all the data, I put it into spreadsheets, and I worked out that I used to take the open, high, low, close every day, put that in a spreadsheet after having observed like a longer term chart of daily data. And I'd say, okay, here's a pullback, here's a breakout, here's this and that. I didn't know I didn't use that language because I didn't know what the pullbacks and breakouts were, but I just noticed, okay, here's a retracement, here's where the trend keeps going. Could I live with this emotionally if I was in the damn trade? That was the big thing for me, because all the money I had ever made really in that time in my life had come from wages or doing gig work.
So what was the answer? Could you?
Oh yeah, I could. It took me a little bit. I'm largely self-taught. I'm a price action trader.
Yep.
I like to scale. Like I talk about progressive exposure. I don't mind buying as much as 5, 6, 10 times into a name. I don't care if it's going up. And we joked on Thursday, what's the buy signal? It's if the thing's in the top right corner, right? So that's kind of how I did it. If the Thursday folks I'm talking about, they had a 2-day event up in Sonoma, and the event was on a Wednesday and a Thursday. And I did a little speaking on Thursday, and I kind of made a joke at the screen that, said, what's the criteria for entry? And I said, well, if the chart's in the top right corner, it's a buy signal. So it didn't come easy. It didn't come easy, Steve. It kind of took me a while to figure out where to calibrate my emotional constitution with what I was seeing on the chart, and when to kind of stick my toe into the water. I didn't typically go to the deep end of the pool and cannonball in. Emotionally, I wanted to do that. But I also knew that I had to protect my cash because I didn't have it to lose.
So what happened next? You're slowly figuring it out. You got an account, $5,000. Did you blow it up, or did you grow it and become a millionaire in college?
Not in college. This is when I got to Wall Street. The stuff that I did at school, I really didn't have time to follow the markets, because you have to remember I was working a job 10, 15 hours a week. The kids I was competing with had trust accounts, so they weren't 529s, but they had money. And I was in various study groups. So I really didn't have time to do anything other than work and read and type up papers. That was it. Lucky for me, I could type with 10 fingers. But I largely remember college as a function of a gigantic reading room, because that's really all I was ever doing. Read a book, write a paper, read 2 books, compare and contrast. Like that's kind of how I remember college. There wasn't, I think CompuServe was available, so you could kind of dial in there and kind of check on stock prices. But my goal was to get through the school and successfully complete it.
Yep.
more than anything. And then once I was done with all of that, immediately go to work to retire the debt that I had acquired in student loans for the last 2 years of school. So that's where my mind was always thinking of like how to make money. So I didn't really get to learn how to trade until I was out of school.
Something you did get from school, though, that we did talk about. Why don't you go on and tell us a little bit about the network that you kind of fell into and the people that you met at Columbia that helped you later on, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly helped me understand how other people think, right? And that was great because when you're in your little microcosm of upstate New York, you know, it was largely working class people who had grown up, they had gone to high school. A lot of them had, my friends' parents did not go to college. They were in maybe the service and or they were on the job, as we would say. They became police or firemen. And the moms were largely, I don't know what the right term today is, but they were stay-home moms, homemakers. I don't know. It wasn't that they couldn't work, but that was just the environment that I was in. You saw a lot more of the moms than the dads, except for maybe at the sporting events or on weekends or this and that. But yes, the folks that I met at school, also the teachers that I had a real profound effect on me because there was no other way that I would ever have learned about, you know, things. Like I got to study with a guy named Philip Kagan, who since passed away. I had him for intermediate macroeconomics, and I didn't know it at the time again because I had to focus. I couldn't get into it, but he is the hyperinflation guru. So after school, I was able to kind of keep in touch with him, and he could refer me works, which was important, you know, to understand for commodities because they respond, you know, positively in inflationary markets. So that was a good little thing. And then, you know, I studied with Robert Mundell. I had 2 classes with him, international trade and international monetary policy and theory, where he went through his ECU, his European currency unit, which he had kind of come up with, I think, going back to like 53. And then
This guy that came up with the idea for the euro, ultimately.
He's considered well, he's since passed away too. He had cancer, rest his soul. He was from British Columbia. You know, he'd be like, we're going out fishing and and he had that real Western Canadian accent. Yeah, he basically came up with the idea that the European community would be better off if they had a centralized currency. And so he and I used to rib each other because we were both into fishing. And he would be like, you know, you can't time the market, you got to buy and hold. So he took, when he won the Nobel Prize in 99, I was already gone from the school, but he took the reward, he took the award. It was like 900K. I don't remember what it was, but he took it in euros, and it subsequently sold off 30%. So I was constantly calling, like, how's your timing of the market going now for you, buddy? Like,
it's like the guys who wanted to get paid in Bitcoin last cycle.
Yeah.
All the mayors and the politicians.
Miami mayor.
Salary in Bitcoin. Yeah.
Well, Michael, let's stick on this topic here of network for a second, because you mentioned it a couple times. The 3 of us hung out recently at a networking event that me and Straza and JC are, you know, trying to put this event together where we can really have a great mind meld of the smartest people that we know to really put our heads together to see what's going on in the markets and talk about strategies and talk about mindset. We're doing that. We're trying to do that. We're having great success with it so far. We hope to do a lot more of it. But one thing I'm fascinated by you, Michael, is years ago, I want to get into your relationship with Ed Seykota, legendary market guru. Guru is the wrong word, but legendary trader Ed Seykota. He was featured in the original Market Wizards, and he famously put together a trading tribe. Can we talk about that a little bit? Because you were involved in that and you were going to those meetings. And can we talk about what was going on there?
I can, to an extent. You know, he and I have anyone who was in the tribe has kind of a handshake. We talked about the mob before. There is a bit of a code of omerta in that you don't kind of kiss and tell. So I can certainly speak about my experiences. I don't want to put words in other people's mouths, but yeah, sure, we can talk about it. I was in the 3rd iteration. He had 2 others. I think I want to say one was in San Diego, like Encinitas, and then maybe another one in Incline Village, Nevada, where I was. So I think my group was the 3rd group he had put together in that vein of trading tribe.
Right. And so for those who don't know, the trading tribe was, for lack of a better phrase, it was like a circle of traders who would get together and talk, but not really about trading specifically, right? You guys would talk about your feelings about trading and the mental side of it. Very little actual trading technique was discussed. Am I close on that?
Not only was not trading not spoken about, the feelings weren't actually spoken about. In fact, if we wanted to kind of give you a dig, we'd say, whatever you do, Sean, don't feel anything, keep talking about it. And that was like a subtle jab that, like, you're in the story, you're in the drama. So if any of you are old enough to remember a show on Broadway called Mummenschanz, where people would kind of disfigure their faces and kind of get into, it would look like primal psychotherapy being performed on Broadway. We would say, okay, like, where do you feel the feeling in your body? You know, is it stable? Is it in your gut, for example? And we would let the person kind of get into the feeling of being them when they think they're uncomfortable. Because our theory was that feelings always are good. Every feeling is good, and they're trying to communicate with you. It's humans who put labels on the feelings. And that was a big eye-opening thing for me too, because I was like, okay, now my feelings can be advocates or apostles for me, not antagonists. And so you'd get into the feeling, like, and it would come up with, like, my partner is busting my chops about trading and they don't understand me. They don't want to understand me. All they do is ridicule me. I have family members who talk about, you know, like the dad in Dead Poets Society, forget all this acting crap. You're going to go to Harvard. You're going to become a doctor. So any of that stuff that could kind of get under your skin, as soon as you get a breakout, it reverses on you, gets stopped. What does that feel like in your body? And why does it keep happening? And so all those feelings could show up anywhere. It could be give you a headache. It could be in your gut. So we'd say, like, okay, first and foremostly, are you willing to feel that feeling right now? Yes or no. If no, okay, we'd go to the next guy. And if someone said yes, if it wasn't Steve, but I'll say Steve. If Steve said no, we'd go next to Tommy and say, okay, Tommy, do you want to share? And he could say yes. And say, can you feel the feeling right now? Oh yeah, I can feel it. It might be a theme, and it keeps coming up, right? So we might do a little bit to help prompt, and not instigate, but prompt them to have the willingness to know that they're safe. They're in a men's group, right? No one's going to say anything or crosstalk, so that you can go to the nth degree of that feeling in a safe environment when no money's on the line. So
This is like Alcoholics Anonymous for traders. Do they still have this? I would love to go to one of these meetings.
but the key is that there was really no talking. There was like a chief, and or the person who would kind of lead the meeting. But for the most part, the questions they weren't yes, no questions as much as they were to help the sender who was in the hot seat want to express themselves physically. So that might mean they might get on the floor in a certain position and gyrate their body to really get into that feeling and take it to the nth degree. Wow. So that eventually, maybe not in that moment, but in the hours to days after, they would get some kind of aha moment and kind of more fully understand. Now that they had that physical release, they could have a better emotional or intellectual understanding of what the hell they were, how they learned that. Where did they pick it up from? Was it from their nuclear family in their house, or was it from learning how to, be in relationships? So it was a very exciting experience, because what ended up happening was, if Steve said no and Tommy said yes, the reason we didn't get into the story was because there might not be, like, the entry point that would give you frustration. I might not be frustrated, Steve. Now I'll speak to you guys. Like, the things that might frustrate Sean or you, Steve, might not actually frustrate me. So if you tell me the frustrating story, I'm like, come on, it won't really resonate with me. But if you tell me about your frustration and where it is in your body, then I don't need to know the story, because I can identify with the frustration. So then if Tommy was really ready, willing, and able to go through that and be vulnerable and to feel his feeling of frustration or aggravation, whatever the feeling was, it tended to lift for everybody, because we would be there too, thinking of our own frustration, even though the story was different. Does that make sense? So we would connect on the emotion, not the drama or the story that got us there.
It seems like obviously this helped you guys because you kept going back, right? Like, how long?
2 years I was there.
Okay. So were you kind of like like, did you stumble upon this? Because this isn't a traditional approach, right? For a trader or investor to think that what you guys were doing in these meetings was important. So like, how do you think you guys figured this out? And you think it gave you some sort of an edge? Like the group of traders that you were hanging out with, a lot of you were very successful guys. Do you think that like this really, really helped you guys or?
Yes. Again, I can't mention the names, but I know to a T it helped everybody. One guy worked and came in from the Bay Area and drove in. He worked for a big, well-known, publicly traded technology company, and he was trading on the side based on what he knew from being in that industry, and he's done very well. Another guy worked at a wirehouse and, oftentimes brought in feelings about having to deal with clients, right? Because my theory was I want the client to give me their money, put it in an account, give me third-party trading authorization, and then basically go away. I don't want to be friends. I'm not looking to talk to you every day. I want to just trade the account. You go back to do what you did to get the money in the first place, but there's really no reason to call me every day to check in or ask me what do I think about gold or cocoa or Nvidia. That's not the type of relationship. But when you're in the wirehouse, you kind of have to field incoming calls. You can't tell people not to call. So yes, they did. They all were very successful in their own way. And, and at the end of the day, you kind of hit the goals that are part of your consciousness. And for some people, it's not about making money. For me, it was so that I could have more and more freedom and independence. It wasn't so that I have more money than the next guy. It wasn't a ranking system for me. It was that I'd have greater levels of independence and freedom. Because I wasn't traumatized by my upbringing, but I certainly remember how hard it was carrying those golf bags in the middle of New York summers, which, you could be out in 90-degree heat with 90-degree humidity, and if I didn't like it, I didn't have to go to work. But I did go to work because I wanted the money. I knew I was going to need it in the future to help fund, my life. Right? It was reinvesting that money, to pay for my education and to help pay my way through stuff so that I get ready, so that I could get a job and learn a skill. And then after 3 years and 3 months from Wall Street, I left. As far as the tribe was concerned, it was free, but I had to fly from Los Angeles to Reno, Tahoe, and then rent a car. I did that every other week for 2 years.
Every other week you were flying to go and do this?
Every other Thursday. We met on Thursday nights at 7:00 at Ed Secoda's house in Incline Village. And every Thursday I'd leave LA. My office was in Century City at the time, and I would drive down to Terminal 1, jump southwest. It was an hour and 15 minutes gate to gate. I'd have a car waiting for me. I'd drive up Mount Rose Highway, and then I'd meet some of the guys for lunch, or we'd shoot pool or play guitar or do whatever. Sometimes I'd take a quick little power nap because I didn't want to be late. So I always got there no later than like 2 for a 7:00 meeting, and the meetings would go to about midnight, and then I'd come back the next day. So it cost me a day of trading. I really couldn't trade. How I got in? Well, like everybody, I had read the book. I actually have the books here. I can see them on my bookshelf. I have a paperback copy that I used to carry with me, but I also have a hardcover. And I used to read the book and not learn about the trading, but say like, these guys are terribly human. Like I can do this. Like I can feel these feelings. These are just regular Joes, right?
Mike, what is that book? What is that book?
Oh, it's Market Wizards.
Oh, that book. Okay.
The first one. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. I have a almost like new hardcover that I just keep at home. And then I had a paperback version that I used to just carry with me because we didn't have cell phones. So if you're sitting on the train, what do? You read a book, so, if you have 10, 15 minutes before a call, I would just read the book. So when I got to Los Angeles, I had already started my CTA. I had about 8 million in client funds. I was a registered CTA member of the NFA. But it was me. I did everything. I did the research, the trading, I did the compliance, I did a prep for all the audit, which is mandatory. It's not, the NFA audits it's a mandatory audit that you have to do. So I had to prep for that. And I was like, I ought to have somebody just for checks and balances here, because this is a big deal for me. This is me now living my dream where I'm doing a white collar job where I actually know what I'm doing, right? And so I said I ought to have a hedge, and I ought to have like an advisory board. What do I do? Do I pay those people? I really didn't have enough money to pay them anything. And And LA isn't like a commodity city. It's an entertainment business city. It's not like New York, Chicago, Hong Kong, London, Sydney. And so I just cold called Ed. I just cold called him once on the phone and we chatted. I said, "Hi, Ed, it's Michael Martin." He goes, "Who's Michael Martin?" And I said, blah, blah, blah. And we talked for 90 minutes and he was just the sweetest guy ever. And we hit it off right away. And we talked for 90 minutes. And then he said, "Okay, I'm putting together this group. We're going to start in the first week of February. I'll email you and let you know." He forgot to let me know. And then he put it up on the FAQ. And I was like, "What, am I not invited?" So I called him. He said, "No, I just forgot." There was an oversight. So I went to the next one. And that was like February of 2002. And it went for about 2.5 years.
Well, what I think is so fascinating about this, and also very important for anyone who's listening to you talk about this now, who might be new to trading and they want to make that next step, they want to become better, they want to become the next market wizards, right? You and many members of this tribe found tremendous value of getting together, but not necessarily talking about, how to get a better entry, how to manage your risk, how to where to place your stops. You guys weren't talking about the X's and O's of trading. You weren't like sharing a secret manual to trading success. Yet, all of you, through exploring your own inner feelings and your own anxieties and your own frustrations and everything that you deal with, not only as a trader, but as a human, that was the stuff that you all could point to and say, "Hey, working through that stuff is what really changed the game for me." I think that's so powerful and so important to talk about, because I feel like just too many people just want to read a book that's going to tell them how to trade. And they think that's going to, they're going to read the X's and O's and they're going to be good to go. And that's not it. That's not the secret.
Also, Sean, like they were ahead of their time too, because I think that, the importance of knowing yourself and talking about your feelings and understanding yourself, the importance of that is well advertised today. We have lots of resources. A lot of people will drill that into your brain. We have trading coaches and things like that. But was there such thing as a trading coach back then? Like, what year was this when you guys were doing this, Michael? Like, I feel like you guys.
It was early 2002 to around, if my memory's right, till around this time, maybe April, May, June of 2004. I don't recall any other environment or trading coach.
Right.
I knew Ari Keefe, but it was only because one of my neighbors on West 78th Street knew the guy. He's since passed away too. I think he had pancreatic cancer. But he was more of a performance coach for, like, I want to say Olympic athletes, if I remember. This is going back a ways. And so I think as trading has become more popular and commissions have gone to zero, the internet's proliferated, the broker dealers now let you churn your own account. There's become a bit of a cottage industry for people, who see this as a financial opportunity. They might not necessarily care about trading per se. They might not even trade, but they know psychology. And so they see, an opportunity to make money. And everyone's got a right to make a living. No, I knew that the stakes were high because now I had gotten to freshman year of me being in my white collar job. The wirehouse stuff was more marketing, gather assets, trade those accounts. But in the back of my mind, I was like, I knew I'm not long for this place because I don't care about selling muni bonds or long-term care or whatever. I knew I wanted to trade because that's how I could accelerate my own net worth and my own capital base. But I knew the math to trading is easy. That's only, honest to God. People think like it's, Yogi Berra said 90% of baseball is half mental. I think like trading is really 90% emotional and psychological. The how to trade part's really easy. The how to trade is fantastically simple. It seems like it's a big mystery when you don't know it, but there's three things. There's three crown jewels to doing it, like on the technical side. How much can you risk on a per trade basis? And I said this on that Thursday. If I break my money up 100 times with 1% risk units, I have 100 mistakes that I can afford. If I trade 0.5% risk units, I get 200. And you can keep breaking it up, right? Quarter point increments, I have 400 potential mistakes. People come and they want to start making so much money so soon, they want to get drafted out of high school and go right to the pros. You got to spend your time in the minor leagues and learn your craft first. most guys, women do this very well, but most guys don't have a sense of patience. They want immediate results. So the marketers are clever enough to say, I can show you how to make $2,800 in 10 minutes without even trying. You go back to bed and hang out with your dog or do whatever. And it's only $2.99 a month to join my Discord. Now, it's hard to fight that off. It's hard to fight that, like, wow, the guy's going to give me the key to the city. And you find out the hard way after, 3 months, you're $1,000 in the hole and you don't know your ass from a hole in the ground when it comes to trading. And most of those promises never really come true. That's why I don't sell trading systems and I do more of the emotional coaching, because I think it's unethical to take a few $1,000 from somebody and hope that they're going to get my rules, because it might not resonate with them. They really have to figure that part out themselves. So for me, it was an inner game. I knew my success was going to come down to be an inner game, and that self-knowledge was more important than anything I could read in a research report or on a chart.
At what point did you figure that out, though? How long did that take? How early on did you kind of have that awareness?
It was probably 2-3 months after I passed my Series 7. So I was not on Wall Street, only not even half a year before I realized. And the reason was, Steve, is because I was in a branch with about 70 brokers on, I'll tell you exactly where it was. It was in Murray Hill, New York City, which is by the United Nations, for those of you who don't or haven't been to Manhattan, 605 3rd Avenue. And I realized, like, everyone's walking around with a story. You need to have, Intel and Microsoft, because that combo was going to win the war in the chip makers and in the PC clone wars at the time. And then we had Ultratech Stepper, and then you had, Cisco, and then someone said there's going to be, this new drug discovery company. But I realized, like, you have 70 different people. They all have different opinions about stuff. And if they're correct, to me, it was because of randomness. I didn't feel like these guys, they were salesmen, right? This because that's what brokerage is. If you work at a wirehouse, you want to be like, I'm a first vice president. Well, I'm in the chairman's club. Well, that's great, because that all comes from your commissions and fees. It has nothing to do with profitability. And even if you do in-house training for people with in-house stuff, and you can call yourself for marketing purposes a portfolio manager, you still don't know jack about risk management. You know asset allocation, which is risk reduction. Risk management's a whole other chapter that you haven't even gotten to. What happens, though, at the wirehouse is you get to 200 million in assets and you're like, I'm just going to sit back and watch TV all day. I'm going to put CNBC on, hit mute, and I don't know what I would do if I didn't have the TV, because they just want to manage their book and coast. So I knew that wasn't going to be me. And I very, very quickly, I wasn't Steve there for a year. And I knew that I was already in a place that I wanted to get out of, because they weren't entrepreneurial, to go back to when I was a kid. They weren't hustlers. They weren't street smart. A lot of them had family money they were in-house, running family money, or they had rich friends. So we were all very different culturally, and it had nothing to do with, gender or religion. It had to do with the mindset around money. I found them to be quintessentially fat and lazy in many ways. And I didn't trust them, right? Because I knew what they said was broker speak. Hey, the stock went from 5 to 8. You doubled your money. I'd be like, what?
So you were surrounded by storytellers.
And people who were like, hey, Steve, it's not what we charge you. It's what you get to keep. Okay. And I was just like, this is really stupid. Like, I can't believe I was trying to daydream to get in here. So then, like, a year in, I wasn't even out of my own training program. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was already building the plan to go start my own company.
Got it.
Wow. Which I did 3 years and 3 months later. So
Michael, if you had $1 million right now that you wanted to seed to a new aspiring young trader, let's say an 18-year-old boy or girl who may or may not go to college. They're at that age, right? Like, they could go to college, but they're not there yet. But you have this $1 million that you want to seed to somebody. Tell me what kind of characteristics you would look for in that individual. Like, what would make you feel comfortable that, all right, this is a guy or girl who is ready to learn, who will learn and will be successful?
And do you think it's even important that they would go to college?
The answer to your question, Steve, is emphatically no. College is not important. It helps. I got to meet people. I got exposed to things that I never would have known. So I benefited from that. So I do believe in knowledge for knowledge's sake, but I can't really say that having read, about conspicuous consumption, Thorstein Veblen or what have you, like I can't trace that to my success in Wall Street. It was great that I went through that and exposed myself to it. But the answer to going to college or university, no. So Sean, the question I would really want to know isn't so much about, because let's face it, people hit me up all the time. You've never seen a back test you didn't like, right? What are you going to do? Show you how, like, hey, that's the old Steve Martin joke. Did you read my book, How I Turned $1 million in Real Estate into $25 in cash? Like, I don't, you're always going to see something that has positive expected value. I want to know about the people, right? That's why people quit jobs. They don't quit jobs. They quit shitty managers, right? So likewise, if I'm going to be in business with someone, I have to know that person. I have to probably like them, which is not Zig Ziglar, right? People do business with you because they like you. Mm-hmm. You have to have some competence, but you have to be a likable person. I want to know, and this is the first question, and this is why I hate HR, because I could never work in a company with all the bullshit that goes on in companies anymore. For the love of God, I would want the conversation to come to tell me about, like, what was the most trying experience that you ever had in your life? And I would spend the next 90 minutes trying to uncover, has this person, like, how thick is their skin? Because trading is going to beat the crap out of you in many ways, especially if you come in your Joe intellect, right? Because no one cares how smart you are on Wall Street. It's like, we don't get paid to know shit. We get paid to execute. Can you execute despite how you feel about how smart you are? Tell me how you have had to struggle. Did you ever worry? Because I'll tell the story, and I'll say it to you guys right now, because it's good humiliation. It's not humiliating for me, but it shows humility, right? There were times when I worked on Wall Street. I lived in Manhattan. I had $1,000 a month in student loans to repay. I had at least $1,000 in rent, and I'd be 2 weeks from payday, and I'd have $70 in my pocket. That's what shapes you as a human being. Like, how do you make that work? So if you have a trust account and you're driving around in a Mercedes and you want to run my money, and you're going to go home to a $2-3 million house in Lake Sherwood or in North Ranch or in Katona, I want to see ultimately what kind of character you have, and the character that you get shapes you from the struggles that you've had, not from all the abundance that your parents or grandparents helped you with. So yeah, those would be my interview questions. And I torture those people. I put the light on like Marathon Man. Is it safe? Is it safe? Oh yes, it's really safe. It hasn't been safer. It's free. Jump right in. And that's what I would want to know is character. Because I don't care about your intelligence. I don't care where you went to school. I don't give a shit about what your 2-minute bars are telling you. Don't care at all. It's, can you make money, and what's going to happen, not in your darkest hour, but when things go against you, how are you going to behave?
Right. You said something very important there very quickly. You said, I don't care if your system makes money, but can you make money? There's a difference. There's a very big difference.
1,000% difference, Sean. I appreciate you highlighting that.
Yeah.
Which is why I don't sell systems, because I could easily, with my reputation, make millions selling something like that, right? I have a good reputation. I try to give back to the community, but I feel like it's kind of unethical to sell you something when I know that your success will have nothing to do with the damn rules. But do you have it in you? Are you a trader?
There's plenty of people on Wall Street, right, who do have a trust fund background or came from money, right, and are successful on Wall Street.
Yeah.
Know if they're necessarily the ones who are actually managing the money and taking the risk, though. I don't know if they're the actual traders at a lot of these firms. I know.
Yeah, I used to caddy for a guy, I won't mention his name, at one of the Westchester clubs. He was a club champ, and he works in brokerage, but he farms out the money to other people like me who are actually making the buy sell decisions. So he's just collecting the management fee. Which, people need help with that. They definitely do.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. But he's not a risk manager. He's not deciding. I always look at that like because they don't have discretion, right? Really, that's the line that you jump over. Who has discretion? Can you, like, I can make all the decisions I want, and I don't need anyone's approval. I get the client or the boss's approval, but ultimately I get to decide what I want to buy and sell and by how much within certain parameters, but I don't need anyone else's permission. And if I make or lose, the buck stops with me. Like, if I make money, it's my fault. If I lose money, it's my fault. I live in a paradigm of personal responsibility. There's no one else to blame. Market sucks, that's on me, because I can know when to sit on my hands, right? Which is, as speculators, it's a very important, I don't want to say it's a skill or it's an attribute of who we are, but we have the right to not participate. And that's very powerful. You don't have to trade every day.
It's huge. Yeah. We're not forced to trade. We don't have a mandate that we don't have to make a certain percentage or a certain dollar amount every day. A lot of us go into it thinking that we need to, or we set these artificial goals or needs. But, at the end of the day, the most successful traders that Michael, the most successful traders I know, all of their incomes are very lumpy. Very lumpy. And they might go long stretches making no money at all.
You're looking at one, lumpy, right? But what you said was an entry point for a trading tribe, right? How do you feel about making money? Some guys want to make nickels and dimes every day. Other guys want to make lumpy gains. So what happens when the market is not amenable to your trading style?
Go golfing.
Right, which is the smart thing to do, right? Sit on your hands, don't participate, observe. Like, my wisdom comes from 36 years of observation of the crowd. So I try to think like, how can I surf the crowd? So I spend my days looking at data as much as I look at charts, because I want to see how did people behave at certain inflection points. And that's not something that you can see on the chart. Or if you can, it's kind of muted. So I'll look at the data and I'll have my own spreadsheets that I look at. It's nothing sophisticated. It's fourth grade math. But I want to see, if people are, for example, are afraid of overnight risk, which is irrational, I'd say, okay, well, where do you feel that? If you had 10 NQs on, right, even through today's close, and you were nervous about taking it home overnight over the weekend, where do you feel that feeling in your body? And that would be an entry point, and you'd be better able to discover, where does that fear actually come from? Because for me, I don't know what irrational fear is from a psychological standpoint. I've heard the expression about it 5 million times. But if there wasn't an experience that you had in your life that blew you out by 40%, that made you a little head shy to carry risk home overnight, then you were going on theory. You didn't have the experience, right, that would make you have the fear. So the fear that you have is not experiential. It's a priori, before the fact. You think you're afraid, but it might be something else. Because the thing that I learned in the trading tribe, and, the feelings that I wanted to feel, Steve, was that they were oftentimes on the other side of the feelings that I didn't want to feel. So I had to say, okay, well, in management, they say if something's not working, you got to change the man, or you got to change the man. And so I knew, since there was just me, I had to go inward and say self-knowledge is the key here. Self-knowledge is the key. I could bore you to tears about the cocoa market fundamentals and yellow soybeans number 2 for sure. But knowing that information, we can get that on a Google search now. So having an encyclopedic knowledge about any instrument, stock, future, currency, whatever, who cares? You could look it up. Even options. Want to talk about options charm? Who cares? Go look it up. Doesn't matter. Moneyness, another big word. Who cares? Go look it up.
You said earlier that while you were younger, at least, you had no fear of losing.
Right.
Once you started participating more in the market, I mean, do you fear the market at all? Like, what is that feeling like if it's not fear?
I think it came from competitive sports. I was always on a team. I was very quickly a center iceman. I was a center in the football team for the 8 years that I played through Pop Warner in high school. And I was a catcher in baseball. And so very rarely did I have my name in the paper. In hockey, I had my name in the paper because I'd make some points. I was a good playmaker. But it wouldn't be like Martin makes 3 assists on the goals that mattered. It was always like Sean, Chicago Sean scores the winner with 30 seconds left. And there's not a mention of the guy who got hit by three guys by drawing all the defenders over to him so I could hit Sean, just waiting for the puck to bury it, and win, which I'm sure he did. I think you were defense, right?
No, I was a left winger.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Even better. So I was used to like doing very well and playing my role very dutifully. And we had a ball control offense, and we had everyone on the offensive line were honor students. So we had a ball control offense, and the pitching staff that I caught for could throw largely at least two, if not four pitches and spot the ball. There's a difference, but you catch the ball, you learn the hard way that there's a difference between command and control. But these guys could really spot the ball. And so I learned how to practice hard, but also practice smartly, go out and compete, still get your head kicked in. And then what do you do that next Monday? You're doing the hard thing. You have to go and be positive, like I'm going to win. So I learned how to manifest my success from a very young age, just through those life experiences. So when I got to Wall Street, I had already hit so many of my goals that I knew it was just like, okay, which goal do I want to pick now to hit? Right. And so people are like, oh, I'm going to try my hand at the market. I'm like, don't do it, because that attitude sucks. I'm going to just see what the market gives me. You have to determine in your mind ahead of time what you want, and then go act out and do the things that you need to do to get that money. If you come into the market with this flaccid attitude of like, oh, I'm just going to try my hand at it, that kind of thing, and not make the commitment, you're going to get commitment-less response from the marketplace, because you're having a conversation, man. You're having a conversation with the market, and the money that you want to make is already in someone else's account. So the question then becomes, Steve and Sean, how do I get more credits coming to me, not being a credit option seller, Sean, but how do I get more credits from trading profits coming into my account than probably the more frequent debits that are going out? That's the game. That to me is emotional intelligence and psychology, not trading tactics, not by a long shot.
Well, you mentioned it with sports when you were saying that, all the smarts that you had in those sports. Look, everyone who plays those sports, they all know the rules, right? Just like a trader can know the ins and outs, the X's and O's of a trading strategy, but it's how you react to things that you didn't anticipate or things that didn't go your way. That's where the rubber meets the road, and that's where the success happens. And you can't quantify it necessarily, and there's no manual that works for everybody. We all have to go through it, and we have to find our own way in that way of dealing with our own emotions and our own insecurities and all that stuff. And that's it. If there's any secret in trading, that it's somewhere in that world right there.
There were two football teams in my town, and by the time we got to high school, they kind of merged. So it kind of became a bit of an all-star team. But there was one kid that I played with for the entire 8 years, and he was blindside tackle. And if he got lined up against some kind of, defensive tackle or edge rusher and he got beat, he would go on tilt, and then he'd get penalties for holding. And so I saw what going on tilt looked like. It didn't relate directly to trading the markets, but I could see what self-sabotage. And this guy was good. There's a reason why you're blindside tackle. You're right. You have to know what you're doing. So at the end of the day, I'd have to grab his face mask, and he's 6'4", 225. And because I was, captain of the line, and I'd have to say, dude, you got to keep your shit together, bro. We can't have you going off on tilt. If you're facing a good player, tell us, because we'll find another blocker. We'll run plays to neutralize that. But you can't implode and take it personally because you're playing against somebody who's really, really good. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. The key is you have to come back and play the next day, right?
This is hitting home for me, Michael, because I'm assistant coach on my son's baseball team. I coach 9 and 10-year-olds.
So that means how many guys you coach?
We have 12 kids on the team. 12
so
boys.
You have 12 assistant coaches.
No, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, well, we have one kid on our team, and we just had a game the other night, and he pitched a couple of the middle innings, and this kid has undeniably the most raw talent of anybody on the team, perhaps even in the league. This kid has every tool for baseball, right? He's got an arm, he can hit everything. Well, he was pitching in this game. And boy, I mean, when he's on, he's slinging it, man. He's throwing it faster than anybody in the league, and he's throwing it straight, and he's perfect. The problem is that and I'm not exaggerating, but every time he threw a ball that was not, a pitch was not called a strike, he would visibly get upset.
Yeah.
He would he would like pound his chest, and he was like, he was clearly upset at himself, not at the ref. He was upset at himself. And this went on batter after batter after batter. By the end of the second inning that he was pitching, I mean, he was all over the place. He had no command of the ball. He was throwing it left and right, couldn't throw strikes. It was all because his mental game was completely out of whack. And he's a 10-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And, we're trying to deal and work through this and help the kid, because, man, he's got all the talent in the world. And we see this with traders, right? Traders have all the talent in the world, but for whatever reason, they've got some mental quirk. Maybe they're too cavalier with their risk taking or whatever, or they don't take care of their bodies and they come into work hungover and they just can't think straight. But we know that they have everything they need. And it's frustrating to see that.
Yeah, so that's why go ahead, Steve.
We all know this sports kid. Like, I'm literally thinking of somebody in my head, and it's a problem. It happens a lot. What will end up happening as they get older, though, it will get worse, because the opponents now, if he's only 10, probably haven't figured out that pain point that they can kind of push him, right, and poke at him and get him to get off his game.
Yes.
As you get older, the opponents can figure that out, and they'll play to that, and they'll poke him until he loses it. And it's just, doesn't matter how good he is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think in trading, it could actually be worse, because anytime you step into the market, you don't know if you're trading against some other retail person or Tudor Jones, right? So you're going pro, basically. So I would say, like, if you want to, get pro results, you have to do the things that the pros do, right?
Absolutely.
And so, behavior predicts where you end up in life. So to me, it's all behavioral. And it really just comes down to that. It's what is your behavior? Your behavior is absolutely going to predict, where you end up, and telegraph what your results are going to be.
Well, speaking of going pro, Michael, I feel like you on this podcast brought me and Steve to a new pro level. So thank you for being here and really elevating all of our games. Straza's got a point to make. Say it, Straza.
I've asked this to everybody. I want to keep asking this question. I think this is a really good one for Michael, too, before we wrap up.
That's all the time I have today, guys. Thanks so much.
No.
Okay.
You made a big point about, like, you were inspired to be in the market because of your desire to achieve financial independence, right? Now, are you still paying off your student loans and worrying about your mortgage, or have you achieved that financial independence at this point in your life?
Yeah, I have all the money I'll ever need. The loans were repaid a long time ago, and yeah, I have no debt. And even when I use, like, my credit card to come up and see all you guys, I pay, I have one particular card that has a big credit limit, but because I'm still in that mindset of not wanting to owe people, and I am aware now of what my credit score is, I pay that bill every Friday. I don't even wait for the statement to come. It's all electronic anyway, but every Friday I'll go in and I'll look and I'll see whatever it is, and I'll just set it up to go off, before 5 p.m. and square it up every week.
So I'm so glad about your credit score. So listen, one thing that I struggle with is, once you achieve the goals that you set for yourself in your career, sometimes you can get bored or lose interest or lose that passion that you had that helped you get to achieving those goals. Now that you've, achieve the financial independence that you want, what keeps you passionate or inspired and still, like, involved in markets today? Like, what keeps you going now today? Because it's not that anymore.
So the thing that I like is that when I started, I was basically broke. I didn't have any money to lose, and there were only books and people. There wasn't an internet, so there weren't any of these communities, these telegrams, these discords, this and that. Not that they're valuable, but there wasn't a community. And I remember having a little chat with God, and I said, listen, if I have any type of success with that, because this is how big this is. I knew it was at an inflection point where I was going to go from blue collar to white collar. I said, I promise I will help anybody who could fog a mirror, basically, and help those people out. So I give a bunch of money away to nonprofits that are important to me. I also do a lot of coaching on the mental side, because that, to me, is where the rub. The YouTube channel is Trader Mindset. And I do, it's like chicken soup for the trader's soul kind of a deal. 5 or 10 minute episodes every day, Monday through Friday. And it's really meaningful for me to help the world needs good risk managers, right? CalPERS is going to be around for another 200 years, right? Endowments and trust accounts, foundations, they're going to be around for a long time. They need competent risk managers to help out. So it might as well be you, right? So that's what really motivates me these days, is to kind of give back to the younger generation, helping them out. And I like the personal challenge. The market's always changed, so I have to kind of keep pace with the storm. So there is a lot of personal benefit to me. It's not so much financial anymore, but it's kind of staying in the game, always challenging myself. That's what I really like about it.
It's awesome. Good for you.
Well, Michael, I want to, we promised we'd only keep you for an hour. We've already exceeded that, so sorry for that. But I just want to share this little anecdote with you real quick before we go. We've mentioned a few times while we've been talking today about the portfolio accelerator that All Star Charts puts on for our clients. And you came to that event, you accepted our invite, and you came, and we were so happy you came. And I wanted you to know that we've been receiving feedback from our clients and attendees who came to that event. And,
nice.
And it's been unanimously mentioned by many people that one of the highlights of the entire 2 days was your talk at the very end when we were talking about trader psychology. It's been pointed out by several people that your talk was the highlight of the entire event. So, hey, seriously, thank you. I mean, you brought.
I had no idea. I had no idea.
You brought the heat, and we're very grateful for it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That makes me feel good. You never know, when you say things, who is impacted or how they're impacted. I know one thing, I'm authentic, right? Because my book was all about failure, right? I had lots of winning trades over that window of time, but I just wrote about my failures because I think that's what people can identify with when they're trying to figure out the solution. So, maybe that was it, but I was really grateful to just be invited. I was really happy to see everybody. So I'm glad they've got some great feedback from that. That's great. Thank you. That makes my day.
Great. I think that was a real treat for everybody. So thank you.
Yeah. All right. So Michael, thanks for joining us. We're big fans, and we're happy to have you in our sphere. Nothing but love, buddy. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, likewise, folks, you got to go check out All Star Charts. I mean, this is not an advertisement, but I have been around a long time. I do my own research, and the stuff that I saw, on the commodities and the specialty ETFs was best in class.
All right, Straza, you see that? We've got our new salesman.
Too kind.
Happy to do it. I don't want to get paid either. I'm just happy to. I don't want affiliate commissions or this and that. But honestly, folks, if you're looking at, because I get a lot of questions from people like, how do you screen stocks and this and that? And I'm like, you can go to these various places, you get what you pay for, but folks should definitely check out All Star Charts for sure.
All right.
Thanks so much, Mike. Guys. So good to see you.